Welcome to the Wild About Turkey Hunting podcast, a show for those who love the thrill of that first morning gobble, who love sharing the outdoors with a close friend, and for those who never want to stop learning about this awesome ritual we call spring turkey hunting. I'm Josh Davis, I'm wild about turkey hunting, and I bet you are too. Thanks for joining, let's get started. Well, what separates the guys who consistently tag gobblers from the ones who just hear them? Today we're breaking down the full turkey playbook, from e-scouting a new property before you ever leave the house, to knowing when patience is deadly and when it's costing you the bird. We're talking about picking the right setup when a gobbler answers, reading subtle terrain clues most hunters walk right past, and understanding what true woodsmanship looks like inside a turkey's home range. And to help us unpack it all, we've got Zach Lucas from GGG Outdoors Kingdom Connection joining the show. Zach has spent years chasing longbeards across different terrain and pressure levels, and he's built a reputation for being methodical, patient, and deadly when it counts. If you've ever wondered, am I e-scouting the right way? Should I sit longer or make a move? Did I just pick the wrong tree? Or what signs am I missing in the woods? This episode is going to sharpen your approach from the map screen all the way to the final 40 yards. Let's get to it. Well, joining me today is Zach Lucas, and he is a dedicated and faith-rooted turkey hunter known for his thoughtful approach to hunting the woods in his home state of West Virginia and well beyond. As a leader within the Kingdom Connection YouTube series, Zach blends strategy and patience in woodsmanship into some practical blueprints for consistently closing the distance on turkeys. Whether he's breaking down e-scouting tactics or sharing hard-earned lessons from the field, Zach's passion is helping hunters grow in both skill and in purpose. So, Zach, it's great to have you with us on the Wild About Turkey Hunting podcast today.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, we're looking forward to having a good conversation today. So I'm just going to kind of kick things off with this, as we talked a little bit before the show, just as far as what kinds of things we felt like hunters could pull away from with some great ideas. The first thing was, when you're planning an out-of-state turkey trip, which a lot of people like to do, or maybe new hunters are thinking about doing for the first time, what does your e-scouting process kind of really look like? Kind of from the first pull-up of a map to boots on the ground. And what do you think are some mistakes that you see that hunters make even before they ever leave home?
Yeah, I think that, I just kind of jump right into maps. I call local biologists, try to gather as much intel as I possibly can. I don't usually try to gather pins from other people or anything if I can help it. If somebody wants to give me a starting area or whatnot, I'll take that, but I'm not looking for any specific, pin or anything like that. But if I can get an area kind of narrowed down based on intel that I can gather through conversation with people that might live there, or biologists, or any kind of data I can find online as far as kill data for those counties in that area, or those specific WMAs or public areas, then I can kind of narrow down where I want to be, and then I can kind of start my planning process. I mean, it's kind of a long process, kind of figuring out what areas you want to be in, and then diving deeper into those areas and kind of picking areas on the map through e-scouting that may look turkey, specifically, looking for water, good looking roosting areas, or ridges that I can move around on, things like that. Obviously depends on the area or the region of the country, but water is a must. The water is one of the main things that I look for first thing. Creek bottoms, any sort of water, that where they can roost and feed and those kinds of things. Then I just kind of start narrowing that down, and then once you get there, it's all about boots on the ground and driving around, not only finding turkeys but finding where people are. Specifically, to give an example of this, I went to Missouri about 2 years ago, and I had a general area that I wanted to go to, but there was a couple different pieces of public in that area, and I killed in Iowa, and then I drove to Missouri the next day in the rain. It rained the whole day, so I thought, well, I'll just drive around to these areas and, one, look for sign, try to see some turkeys, look for sign, but two, mainly look for people, where those camps are congregated, those kinds of things. I was totally on my own, sleeping in my truck, going to hunt, strictly public ground there. there was these two pieces of public that weren't too far away from one another. So I went to the one first and I drove around the whole thing, marked camps on my map, marked turkeys on my map. Then I went to the second one and I thought, well, if I don't find anything at the second one, at least I've got the first one to fall back on because I've already done my kind of scout around there. Found some turkeys there that I knew I could get to that weren't right around those people's camps and stuff. So I went to the second area, did the same deal, drove all the way around, marked all the camps, found a bunch of turkeys there, marked turkeys, and then I thought, well, I'm going to listen here, and if I roost one or feel good about it, I'll stay here, and if not, I'll just go back to the other place. Well, I ended up roosting a turkey there that night, and I slept in a parking area. Luckily, nobody showed up there, and nobody showed up there the next morning, and I went in there and killed that turkey. So it all worked out, but that's just kind of that's an example of like part of the process. I mean, that whole thing started probably a year and a half in advance, looking at those maps and those areas. And then once you get there, everything looks a little bit different than what it does on the map. Got a general feel for it, but when you get there, that's when everything really starts coming together. So that's kind of my approach to it, and probably a lot of people's approach to it. But um, I look at maps like every single day, every night, somewhere, even if it's right here behind my house or where I hunt and stuff. I'm looking at some kind of ground somewhere all the time.
Yeah, I think that's good because, like you said, just looking for key features, even with ground that you're pretty familiar with, you might be surprised, say, well, 100 yards farther down that ridge, there's actually a bench down there. And I bet that's where that bird was hanging out last year that you were hunting, where you heard him a couple times until you just look at stuff from a topo map or look at an aerial map or whatever. Sometimes you pick out some stuff. You're like, oh, I didn't even know that little water source was over there. Or I didn't know that that little, gas line ran through there or whatever.
Right, and like going back to that, what you're saying, even like ground that you're familiar with. I mean, I just was talking to I talk to people every day about turkeys at some point, and talking to my buddies last week. Me and my daughter went on a little walkabout on this spot that I have to hunt, and last week, and it was a walk that I kind of wanted to take because there's always some turkeys down this bottom, and I just really didn't know how to access it. And now's a great time to get in there and do that, not bump turkeys, and just kind of see lay of the land, or like where can I approach these turkeys a little bit better or whatnot. And so we did that little walkabout and found some really good information that's going to help me access these turkeys come spring. And like I told my buddies, like, killing takes place right now. I mean, squeezing the trigger is in the spring, but the killing part is right now. So like getting ready and getting prepped and seeing that lay of the land. I mean, yeah, you can look at it on the map, but until you walk your boots down in that creek bottom, you're not going to know where that logging road comes down through and up that next point or whatever, or takes you around that bend, and how you can approach that turkey in the dark. I mean, I want to go walk all these places in the daytime so that, come killing time, I can walk them in the dark, no problem. So, that prep, that's part of just staying ready, stay ready so you don't have to get ready kind of deal. That's kind of how I operate all the time as far as just scouting even places that I'm familiar with, kind of getting in there at least once or twice if I can before season, and just kind of looking around, seeing if anything's changed, if there's any trees or obstacles that I'm going to have to deal with, or, I'm going to have to approach a different way, or, there was a timber cut or something, just kind of always staying ready. And I'm always going through places too and being like, well, if there's a turkey out there, I could set up here, or, kind of just playing that stuff in my mind so that my mind's just constantly ready. Like if a turkey gobbled out there, I'm just going to set down right there in that blowdown or whatever. And it's kind of like playing through the scenario in my head all the time. So stay ready so you don't have to get ready kind of deal. That's kind of how I operate.
Yeah. When you're doing e-scouting, sometimes if you're going to hunt out of state, you don't get to see anything until you get there that day. Are there certain terrain features? Obviously, we mentioned water. Turkeys love water. They love to roost near water. They need water, obviously. Are there other things that you're typically looking for, maybe that other hunters are not looking for, or are you looking for certain areas that maybe are not as attractive to other people in general, like when other people may be coming in that area and hunting too?
I might look for places that maybe are a little harder to access. I look for places that mirror some stuff that I'm familiar with that I hunt here. If I'm hunting in like, a hilly region, um, I mean, because like you said, I'm from West Virginia, so that's all I hunt here is mountains, woods, hardwoods. Don't have a whole lot of fields here in the area that I'm in, so it's predominantly hardwoods, big ridges, creek bottoms, things like that. So, obviously, I'm going to try to look for things that mirror the stuff that I'm really familiar with. Um, but if you go to somewhere like South Carolina and hunt in a swamp, it's all flat, looks like the surface of the moon, all pines, maybe some burns, swamp. It's all totally different than here. So you kind of gotta change a little bit. But like you said, I'm always looking for water. I'm always looking for, you know, some breakup, whether it be a transition from hardwoods to pines or pines to a burn or something. Um, Looking for burns, obviously, if you're down in the South, burns can be extremely beneficial. Um, but access, that's a big thing, and then like portions that might be portioned off from the main chunk, maybe a little portion over here that may get overlooked or a portion that butts up against private. That can always be good too if you're struggling to maybe find something, right in the public. Maybe try to butt up against some private with that public, and maybe there's some birds hanging on that private that you might be able to call across. Um, I mean, it's all turkey hunting so situational. It's really hard to be like, well, this is how you do it kind of deal. But there are things that you can kind of say, well, yeah, this is what I like to do.
Yeah, I think that's good. That's some practical stuff. So let's talk about this. The plans are set. You've kind of made it to the woods. You've picked a spot on a map. You decide you're going to head into there. And a lot of hunters say patience kills turkeys. But in your experience, when does patience really not work out for you? When there's a time where maybe patience is it's actually hurting more than it's helping, particularly maybe in showing up in a new area. That could be anything from, it's covered up in trucks when you get there and you just keep hunting it anyway, or you've hunted for a day and you haven't hardly seen any sign, you haven't heard any birds. At what point do you kind of say, my patience has run out or my luck's run out and I need to move on versus still just kind of running with it and sticking with that spot that you've picked out?
Um, I think that like my approach, I'll say this, my approach at home is 100% different than my approach on the road as far as patience and aggression goes. So, like at home, I know I've got, 4 weeks, 5 weeks here at home, and I've got plenty of places that I can bounce around to. So, I'm going to do my very, very best to not bump a bird ever, and not booger him up or make him any harder than he already is. So I'm going to play like, especially early in the year, I'm going to play things safe. I'm not going to just ram in there on him and, be all gung ho like right off the bat, especially when our woods are wide open. It's extremely hard to move. So I play things a lot safer then. I'll get more aggressive as the year goes on if I need to. But I try to just keep birds fresh as much as possible. Now, if I'm traveling, I'm like, I've got limited time. I've got a lot of my resources already tied up in this money, time. I'm away from my family. I've got an unlimited amount of time on the trip, 3, 4 days, 5 days if I'm lucky. Um, Most of the time it's 2, 3 days. So I'm being ultra aggressive. I'm trying to get to as many of these places that I've pinned on the map that kind of piqued my interest and check them out and say, this is not worth my time or this is worth my time. And then I'm going to dive in there and hunt it, see if it's worth my time. If there's turkeys in there, I'm going to just lay with them as long as I can. Unless something messes me up, somebody or a coyote, or if I mess them up or something, then I might bounce. But if I find some turkeys, I'm probably going to try to stick in there because it's hard to leave turkeys to find turkeys. Why would I do that? If I'm limited time, I've already it's kind of the first step of the whole deal is finding a turkey to hunt. So when I find one, I kind of try to stick with him and kill him if I can. Now, if there's instances that I'm like, well, he's not in the best spot for me to kill him. He's in a wide open burn. He doesn't move his feet. It's very hard to get to him. I may go and try to find another turkey, and I usually do try to find a few that I can, kind of plan B, plan C kind of stuff, because I don't ever want to be pigeonholed in a spot, and I never want to be beat to a spot and then not have a backup plan. So I always have, plan A through Z kind of deal. Um, but to answer the patience thing, I mean, patience does kill a lot of turkeys. I try to be as patient as possible. Um, but I do think that there's kind of a fine line with that. I think you can be definitely too patient. I think if you sit there and a turkey's burning it up, for example, if a turkey's here is burning it up across the holler, and I'm sitting on one side of the holler and he's clear across the holler just burning it down, I'm only going to be able to sit there and listen to him for so long. And I'm going to have to go. Like, um, I'll sit there and listen to him for a few times, and I'll try to take his temperature and gauge his interest, and maybe try to get him to cross that holler, because I've had him do it before. It's not often, but you can get them to do it. You can get them to fly if they're hot enough. They'll fly a river, a lake, whatever. Just not a high percentage thing. But um, I'm not going to be extra patient where I'm going to sit there for an hour and listen to him. I'm gonna sit there for a little while maybe and take his temperature, and then I'm gonna cross. Now that's burned me before where I've crossed, and then of course he's been right over there where I was. But um, most of the time I'm gonna try to get to him if I feel like I can without boogering him up. Or if you're gonna go across a wide open creek bottom and he's gonna see you doing it, or like for our first week here when there's no leaves on at all, I mean, there's no way you can do that, unless you just made a big loop. But um, on a trip, I'm going to be pretty aggressive on a turkey, and try to make it happen. Like I said, in my allotted time, because I've got all these resources and my time's tied up, and I'm away from my family, so I'm going to try to make it happen basically at all costs, um, as ethically as obviously ethically. So, but that's kind of where I sit on the patience line. Like, I'm definitely pro patience. Like, patience kills a lot of turkeys, but there is a fine line where you have got to be aggressive in certain scenarios.
Yeah, like you said, because you only have so much time to get it done, and you want it to be successful for the amount of time that you spend away, and the prep, and the money on license and tags and travel and everything. I find for myself that I can sit a little bit longer at home when I just know, I've got all day to get home. I can finish the chores or do whatever, versus like I feel that pressure, but it's hard to balance that. It's going, hey, there's a sense of which I only have so many days to get this done, but not also just rush the hunt and booger birds and do all kinds of things that are just sloppy because you feel like you're in a rush. But I
Right.
could be a lot more patient with a bird at home than I would be on the road.
Sure. And like you said, like at home, I might pop in a spot and hear a turkey or a couple turkeys, and especially I do this especially early in the season. Pop in a spot, hear some turkeys, kind of see how they feel that day, and kind of be like, well, they don't really feel like they're right, or maybe they've got hens with them. So I'll say, okay, I'm not even going to call to them or mess with them. I'm not going to pressure them or nothing. I'm just going to back right out, hop to another spot, leave them for a couple days, and come back. I'll do that a lot, especially early in the year. Like, I mean, I'll start listening next week here for every day, so I'll have a pretty good feel about what's going on and who's got hens and who don't. But when you go in there first week and there's no leaves on the trees, it's really hard to move in some of this stuff. So I'll pop in an area and see what those birds are up to, and if they're in a killable spot, obviously I'm going to try to go in there and kill them. But if they're in a spot that I think, well, if I really get to the place I need to be to kill them, they're probably going to see me. I'm just going to back out, wait till I've got some leaves, and then go back in, or give them a couple days usually, go back in.
Yeah, that's good. So let's talk about this. Once you strike a bird and you decide that you're going to work him, how do you determine the right setup, especially maybe in ground that you're unfamiliar with? Let's say you're for the first time you're walking through the woods and you float out a call and a bird answers. what are you kind of looking for? Like, what are some of the non-negotiables that you're looking for before you really begin that hunt with him?
I mean, first thing I'm trying to do is get as close as I feel like I possibly can without if he's gobbling, if I can get him gobbling, okay, let's just say I strike him up in a creek bottom or something, and I can get him gobbling, and then he starts gobbling on his own. Now, if he's gobbling on his own and I can just keep moving in on him as he's gobbling, that's like the ideal situation because then I don't have to keep calling to him to keep him gobbling. Um, if I can, I'll use an owl or something to keep him gobbling if I have to, rather than a turkey call. But sometimes you just have to. Um, but number one, I'm trying to get as close as I possibly can using some kind of terrain feature, whether it be a hillside or a ditch or a creek or a point. Maybe I can put a point in between me and him and kind of roll around him. Um, and then I'm trying to get a setup that gives me adequate cover, a big tree if possible, or I like horizontal cover too. If I can find a tree that has some horizontal cover, like a blow down log behind me or something, breaks me up a lot, or maybe some autumn olive bushes or something, around this tree that kind of breaks me up, some briars or something. It's usually something that I'm looking for as I'm approaching. I'm thinking, okay, that tree right there can hide me. I need to get to that tree, so I'll put trees between me and him and kind of move up to him if I can as I approach, not just walk right out in the middle or something. Um, like I said, use terrain or use trees, put trees between you and him and approach him. And then in my setup, I'm always looking for something where when I see him, he's going to be in gun range. I don't want him coming, especially if I don't have decoys, which I try not to hunt with decoys. Sometimes I do. I don't have anything against decoys at all. I like hunting with decoys. But my preference, if I can, is hunt no decoys. Just hide and seek in the woods. That's my favorite. So just going that avenue. If I'm going to set up like that, I want to be when I see him, he's in range. I don't want him to be looking 100 yards through the woods and have a hang up or be like, yeah, she's not down there and start geeking out on me. Um, so I usually will try to put, a bend in the road, or, he has to come around that hillside, or he has to come up out of that holler onto that bench I'm on. I don't like my least favorite setup is them coming up and popping up, and all you can see is wattles up, because if you're here and you're a right-handed shooter and he pops up over here to your right, you're in trouble. And I've had him do that a bunch. So I try not to set up. It's hard sometimes, especially here. If he's down over the lip, it's hard to do that sometimes. But I try to back off enough to where he has to come at least up on that bench to see me where I'm calling at. Um, and then if I can too, I'll try to go out. I'll find my tree and say, this is a really good hide. And if I can, I'll run out in front of me somewhere and I'll call, and then I'll go back and sit down and hopefully have him come there instead of come, at a bad angle for me where I'm actually sit down at. Kind of try to steer him per se to that spot. But like we said, it's all situational stuff. I mean, these are just kind of some rules of thumb that I kind of go by, but you just kind of gotta find a good hide majority of the time. I think that majority of people that are getting into it early on, probably the mistake that they make is just not thinking they have enough time. And sometimes a bird does come in on you fast. I mean, it happens. But most of the time, if you really just kind of slow things down and you can find a good hide, and don't go crashing over there to it, or don't, if you're walking through a place and you strike a bird, don't panic and just go run it. Like, you don't have to go running back that tree and sound like an elephant running back there and crash down. And take your time, get you a good hide, be quiet as you can, especially if he's close. I mean, them turkeys can hear, so you crashing around is very abnormal to him. Not the norm. So, especially if you're a hen, I mean, they don't weigh 20 pounds. So, you can't be crashing around making a bunch of racket. Um, but yeah, take your time. Don't panic. Slow things down. Take your time and get a nice setup if you can. Try to get some horizontal cover. Clip you some limbs if you have to. Put them up in front of you or whatever, just to try to break up your outline as much as possible. Those are the things that I try to do and look for, if you can.
Yeah, because I think you can easily get into a trap. I mean, especially if you've gone all morning and you haven't heard a bird and one finally is gobbling, you can just hurry up and rush and you can just sit right down. And I know that especially where you and I both hunt kind of in the Midwestern states a lot, that first week or so, you get that 10 o'clock sun up above you and it's bright through the woods and it's reflecting off the leaves. And you may have a nice tree that's nice and wide and you have a good field of view, but you're just out in the sun like a sore thumb. But if you just stop and assess, you may see that, and you might have to backtrack a little bit. But if you go back 35 yards, you might have a tree it's got, like I said, some autumn olive or a holly bush or something like that along that's got some extra shade. That at least you're going to be out of sight. You're not going to be just glaring right out in the open, with especially with your even your gun and the bill of your hat and all that kind of stuff. And it's worth the extra few minutes to find yourself in a spot where you're going to be well hidden when that bird does come into view. Also.
Right. And talking about sun specifically, that kind of got that's something that I think that comes over time. That's something you really start paying attention to, more. As the morning progresses, if you're hunting on places that even if you're hunting on places that you don't know, pay attention to where that sun's coming up, and know like, well, gosh, if I sit down here and I'm working a bird, well, in 30 minutes it's going to be right in my face, or it's going to be shining on me like a spotlight. And those are things that you pick up on, and you kind of learn to put that sun at your back, if you can. Or even, I think a lot of people get caught up in, I've got to sit down with my back to a tree and my gun on my knee, and you don't. Like, you can get behind that tree and stand up, or even just kneel behind that tree and let that sun hit the front of that tree, and then you can be behind that tree in the shadows. Obviously use shadows for sure. That's another huge thing. If you can find shadows, um, that's a huge deal for hiding. But also, like, I have a good friend, Darren Dye, which a lot of people probably know him. He's a straight up turkey killer. But I talk to him a lot, and he was telling me one time, he was like, so many people get caught up in, having to sit, or like, this is the rules, like, you have to sit to this turkey with your knees up. And he said, if you're somewhere and you strike that turkey, what's wrong with you just slipping over to that tree right next to you? Like, he obviously doesn't know you're there because he gobbled at you just now. There's no reason for you to go crash and find a setup. Like, he doesn't know you're there. He hasn't seen you. Like, just get by that tree right there and call him up right there. And that works too. In certain instances, those are all just things that you kind of learn over time. And then when you talk to seasoned hunters, that they pass on that kind of little knowledge like that, and you put that in your little bag of tricks that you can just kind of dive into, or delve into when you need to. So yeah, it's just how it is turkey hunting.
Yeah, that's right, and I think that's just part of woodsmanship overall is just kind of being able to read the situation, and not everything is going to be on repeat. I know last year a bird I killed in Michigan, I was laying flat on my stomach. I was just prone out, and I belly crawled out through part of a field to get to where he was. He'd already come in, he had gone back, didn't get a chance to get a shot at him. He got back to his comfort zone, so I just worked my way out, got underneath a couple bushes. And this bush probably wasn't even 5 foot in diameter, but I just got in underneath on the shady side and laid there and called, and he came back out just to take another peek and was able to shoot him. When I hunt with my dad, he doesn't sit down as much as he used to. He's sometimes just hard getting up and down, and so he stands a lot, and he'll stand, but he'll find a tree. It's got a couple of low branches or a big crotch in the middle of it where he can just watch in between and shoot, and he can still kill a lot of birds that way. You don't always have to sit down. It's nice when you can because it's comfortable and it can keep you still, can keep you patient for a long period of time, but you just have to read what the situations are and be willing to adapt to it. Well, as we just keep talking about woodsmanship, when you're moving through a turkey's home range, what are maybe some subtle signs or just some clues about the environment around you that you're just constantly reading that maybe even a lot of hunters overlook?
Yeah, I mean, I think that woodsmanship, I actually listened to a podcast last week that Mike Pentecost did. If you haven't listened to it yet, you need to. It's really good. It's about talking about woodsmanship a lot. He was talking about, woodsmanship is just basically melting into the environment around you. Um, and he's with Woodhaven, so they use the ninja term, which I mean that's pretty accurate. I mean, you want to become the woods. You're going into their home. It'd be just like me going into your house and moving something around. You're gonna come in and you're gonna be like, "Whoa, that's not where that belongs." Everything in your house is, where it's at and all that stuff. And turkey's the same way that, they're fighting for their life from before they're even born. So they're extremely like keen on like everything around them all the time and like what's going on. And, the woods are giving them clues too as to danger or whatever, whether it be a hawk or blue jays or crows or whatever. So, I mean, you as a hunter, woodsman need to be in tune with all that as well. Um, so I mean, yeah, just kind of melting into the surroundings. I always kind of go to a place, and I always tell my kids this too, because they always want to go in somewhere and hoot and holler and carry on and stuff. And that's like, hey, look, I don't ever want nobody to know, or no animal or person or anybody to even know I've ever been here, and just kind of in and out kind of deal. And that's just how I've always kind of approached it. But, pay attention to things going on around you, pay attention to birds, specifically like blue jays and stuff squawking around. They'll squawk around and give a gobbler's position away. I've had that happen a lot of times where I've been creeping out a ridge and nothing gobbling, and blue jays start squawking around, and I'm like, oh, there's something going on over there. Or crows do it a lot too. They'll be pestering them, and something's going on over there, and you kind of start creeping that direction, and all of a sudden you start hearing drumming, and you're like, ah, that's what's going on. He's down there drumming and just strutting on his stage or whatever. So, those are things that you kind of pick up on over time. I mean, early on, people don't pick up on that or pay attention to that, but as you hunt and you mature and you progress and figure those things out, those are little cues. Jake calking, that's another thing. If you can hear a Jake yelping, most of the time he's probably yelping at a turkey drumming, a gobbler drumming. So that's another little thing. And if you're quiet and you're just melting along through the woods, you can pick up on that stuff. But if you're, constantly talking, or you're constantly, cracking sticks, or you're not walking quiet, then you're not going to pick up on any of that stuff. And most of the time when I hunt with people, I hunt with a lot of like-minded people that hunt the same way as I do. So we hunt really well together, and we're not doing a whole lot of talking in the woods. There'll be times where we sit down to eat a breakfast bar or something, and we're talking, but we're always quiet. We're always listening. Woodpecker goes, crow goes, we stop, chewing, listen, everything. And that I do that in not just every day. But yeah, I mean, even when I'm hunting with most of the guys I hunt with, we're not walking through the woods talking a whole lot. We're always paying attention and listening and trying to pick up drumming. There's been a lot of times that I've been moving along and heard a turkey drumming and ended up killing him just because I've heard him drumming and before he caught me or whatever. But like I said, those things are things you pick up on over time, and as you mature as a turkey hunter, you learn to you learn how you can move through the woods and what can be extremely effective to you and what can tip you off to, something that's going on around
Hmm.
you.
Yeah, and I think it's important to when you're going through the woods, you may have called at a spot, not heard anything. You think, okay, you look at your map or whatever, you say, I'm going to go to this next ridge or whatever. You're still hunting from point A to point B because
Yeah.
you may only go 20 more yards and all of a sudden you hear drumming or you hear, I've heard just birds just scratching the leaves or even a turkey walking in that
Mhm.
didn't say anything, but all of a sudden they're, is you have to keep assessing as you're moving along through the woods and kind of just your every step is intentional hunting.
Correct. Yeah, everything's intentional, thought out. Like you said, I'm not just saying, well, I got to get to that high knob, so I'm just going to burn feet to get there. I'm hunting my way to that spot. Killed a lot of turkeys between point A and point B. Like you said, I've been walking slow and heard turkeys scratching over the hill from me. You figure out that cadence of scratch, and you can figure
Mm-hmm.
that out, and it's very distinct. It's not like anything else. It's not like a squirrel or a deer walking or anything. It's a very distinct cadence of scratching, and you quickly can figure out, hey, that's scratching. These things are particularly important in areas that are like high pressure areas. I can say that they've been very effective for me hunting places in the South that are very high pressure. Turkeys have that reputation of being tough, don't gobble a whole lot, things like that. Those kinds of things where your woodsmanship really comes into play, where you can really feel out situations and find turkeys even when they're not gobbling. Those things really help in places like that.
Yeah, that's right. That's good. Well, let's kind of tie all of this together. So, how do planning, we talk about patience, we talk about setup, we talk about woodsmanship. How do all those things kind of tie together in a single hunt, kind of from map study all the way to that final 40 yards of that gobbler walking in? Can you maybe walk us through a hunt where you had some of those similar elements kind of come together, and what was the outcome, or what was that like?
Yeah, I mean, every turkey hunt is not the same.
Mm-hmm.
Every turkey hunt's different, for the most part. I mean, there may be instances in a turkey hunt where you can be like, "Oh, I've had this happen before," or something similar to this has happened before. But for the most part, every hunt's a little bit different. Um, so the more tools you have in your bag, the better off you're going to be. The more prepared you're going to be. Like I said, stay ready so you don't have to get ready. um, Constantly just reviewing in your mind these old hunts, replaying in your mind these old hunts and these things that have happened to you, so that if something similar does happen, you can reach in that bag really quick and you already know the next move on the table that you're making. Um, I can't think of a hunt right off the top of my head specifically. Um, I mean, I've had so many hunts where I've had turkeys fly down and work around the hill from me, um, and I've had to use terrain and woodsmanship to make a move, a kill move to get to them. I've had to use terrain so much to get in kill spots to kill turkeys. I mean, you can be in a spot, but you can be off by 30, 40 yards from the actual kill spot, so you're kind of out of the game. You're on the outside looking in until you can get in that bubble. And then and like you said, I think you said something earlier about a turkey that you had killed where he had been there, he had walked away, and then you called him back. That's a pretty effective thing. If the turkey's been in a spot strutting all morning in this little on his stage or whatever you want to call it, um, and then he works his way off of it, or you shut up long enough to let him work his way off of it. That's most of the time what you have to do. If you just keep calling to him, he's just going to pirouette in circles in that spot. But if you can be quiet, let him maybe drop off that top, and then you can make a push, 40-yard push to get up there to where you can shoot that stage, then call him back up because he's already been there all morning for an hour or whatever it may be. He's familiar with it. He knows it's a safe zone right there because he just came from there. Most of the time, you can get in there and call and pull him back up on that stage. So yeah, I mean, all these little tools. I talked about preparation earlier and just staying ready and being prepped, and you know, I'm very blessed and fortunate with my job that I work from home. So um, I get to go listen every single morning, and I do. I listen from March 1st, typically if the weather permits, March 1st all the way till our season here doesn't come in until around April the 20th. So a month and a half roughly of listening, and I listen every single day, and feel like that just preps you and it keeps you in the game constantly, knowing like, and I'll go check on these turkeys multiple times and be like, okay, well they're breaking up, or okay, they've got a bunch of hens today. I'll check on them a couple days later and they might have lost some hens or whatever. So it just kind of keeps you knowing what's going on out there, keeping with the turkeys and things like that. But all that prep, like I said earlier, killing's going on right now in my head. Squeezing the trigger will happen in April and May, but I'm already planning approach, hide, all that stuff. Like when I find turkeys in, the end of March, when they start moving around to spring zones from winter areas and they start kind of breaking up, and I start kind of seeing these turkeys on an everyday basis in these spots, then I'm like, okay, well, that's probably where he's going to stay, for the springtime. That's where he's gonna roost in that general area, in that creek bottom or on that point or on that ridge or whatever he may choose. But all that prep going into the season and me finding these turkeys, and when I find them, I'm already killing them in my head. I'm already saying like, well, this is how I'm going to approach him. This is where I'm going to hide. This is how I'm going to call to him. This is how I'm going to, do it. And it might change on the fly, and I'll be ready if it does. But, I'm already planning all that stuff in my head, how I'm going to go about all that stuff. I'm not going to go in there, you know, day one blind and unprepared and him throw me a curveball that I'm not ready for. Because most of the time I'm going to kill him on the first set or the second set. Most of the time, like especially here when I'm in a place that I'm familiar. Now out of state, I might have to hunt him 2 or 3 days and figure out where he likes to go and what he likes to be. But here I'm going to already know what tree he likes to be in and where he likes to go after he flies down, and how I'm going to intercept him or how I'm going to set up on him, kind of thing. So most of the time, if I play everything right, like I said, first set or second set, he's going to be dead. But all that stuff plays into consistently killing turkeys, just being ready, staying ready, being prepared, knowing how to approach, woodsmanship. And calling is important, but it is not by far the most important thing out there. There's a lot of guys out here that can't run a turkey call at all that kill a pile of turkeys. Just by woodsmanship or being able to, be in the right places at the right times. And, maybe they can squawk on a turkey call a little bit, but and I'm not saying calling's not important. Realism absolutely kills turkeys. It will stack your hand a little bit if you can be more real and you practice it and you become more real. It definitely helps. And anything that you can do to put some odds in your favor, obviously, because the turkey is much smarter than us and much more keen with their survival and their eyesight and all that than we are. But I feel like we can go on and on and on forever on that, because there's so many crutches that people have come to gain over the years, trying to stack the odds in our favor instead of the turkey's favor. So it's kind of like, it's kind of a gray area. You could go on and on about all kinds of stuff, decoys, on X, whatever you want to say. Better calls now than there used to be, better guns, better ammo, better camo, all that stuff. Yeah, sure. But if you play him on a fair playing field, you give him a fair shake, and you just match wits with him. That's what got me into turkey hunting, is the ultimate matching of wits, the ultimate chess match with him on his home turf where he lives. I grew up reading Turkey and Turkey Hunting magazine. I'd get every one of them I could get. I read every Bad Birds segment in every magazine there was. My dad wasn't a turkey hunter. We grew up. He took me, and we learned through a lot of trial and error. And I'm super thankful for that now, because I learned a lot of really tough, hard lessons early on whenever I was learning how to turkey hunt. Self-taught kind of deal. My dad had no clue what he was doing. Got an old Lynch box call, which I still have over there in the cabinet, and called my first turkey in with that box call. Still have it. And I was hooked ever since. But everything that I learned was self-taught, or I really had to seek it out. Go to a library, find a VHS at the movie rental store and rent it every year to watch. And just grew up on that stuff and got bit by the bug, and it took hold of me. So, and that's the way, I still am today. I'm constantly learning. I mean, yeah, it can be depressing sometimes that like the learning curve nowadays for people getting into it is so much shorter than it was then. It's like almost given to people, not earned. But at the same time, it's like, there's plenty of space for everybody to hunt. We can all get along. There's no reason for us to be at each other's throats about it. It's just a turkey and it's just a game and we just love it.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, but that experience factor, is what gives you longevity of success, and it feels rewarding too, between just the matching wits with the bird and all that kind of stuff, and yeah, getting out there ahead of the time in the season, before the season ever begins, and listen to them, or listen to, like you said, kind of going, oh, I know where that bird likes to be, and I can go over here. This bird likes to be in that area. Versus, yeah, there's people that they can buy all the bag of tricks that the hunting store has and set them all out and do whatever and get a bird. But to consistently year after year get to have success like that, I think it comes a lot with just you have to be willing to keep learning, and that's kind of the idea of this whole podcast with that I've got is that, the pursuit is wild, that we never stop learning, and we just keep stacking upon with experience. And I think that it's good for us to also, those that have been hunting for a long time, to not take things for granted, where things were maybe they've come a little easier. We pick up on a little more naturally than we used to because of the amount of experience that we have, and to make sure that we're passing that on to other people. I try to pass that on to my kids. I got a lot of friends from church. I try to take hunting and things like that, and try to help them learn along the way too, rather than just saying, "Hey, just go sit in this field and pop up a blind and put out a dozen decoys and you'll kill a turkey tomorrow." I wanted to understand like how it can work beyond that scenario. That can kill turkeys, and that's fine. People can fill their tag with it, however they choose, so long as it's legal. I'm okay with that. But I want them to know maybe some of the ways that you and I have, sounds like, grown up similar to just enjoying all of that kind of stuff. So
right. I mean, I always have tried to like make a goal for myself to introduce somebody new every spring if I can, whether it be a kid or an adult that just maybe has never experienced it, or maybe they've been and they just haven't experienced it how I hunt. Maybe they've only experienced it in a blind, deer hunting a turkey kind of deal. So I try to expose people to that. And then, like, with my kids, especially, like, both of them killed their first turkeys out of blinds, and then after I felt like they were big enough and old enough, I said, okay, we're not doing that anymore. Like, you're going to put your back on a tree and you're going to hunt like I hunt. And then you can formulate your own opinion on it, whether what you like better. And both of them have been like, yeah, this is way better than hunting out of blind. They made that decision on their own. I didn't. I just exposed them to both. And then, like, my nephew, he's kind of my protege kind of deal. His dad don't hunt, so I'm his avenue to take him hunting, and I've taken him since he was little, and now he's bigger, taller than I am. He's 16, but he's ate up with it now. And so, and he calls me every day, and we talk hunting and deer hunting and turkey hunting. But he's already gung ho ready for spring, can't wait, and he's become like my hunting buddy here. So, it's just letting people formulate their own opinions. Like you said, like giving them the tools to do that, to formulate their own opinion, or like see it from a different perspective than they might see on, Outdoor Channel or whatever, blind with a bunch of decoys out there, which I'm not opposed to. Like, if that's how you want to hunt, whatever, that's totally fine. And there are situations that I hunt that way. I don't like blinds. I don't hunt out of blinds, but there are some situations where you have to have a blind to be in the spot. I mean, both of my girls killed last year on Youth Day here in the middle of this wide open field where, and my youngest just, I could have crawled them up underneath them turkeys where they were roosted, but like my youngest couldn't do that. And I wanted her to kill and have the experience. And we had an awesome hunt. So, I'm not frowning upon any of that. It's just, you formulate your own opinion on how you want to hunt, and just play the game fair on his stage. And that's
yeah,
all it is.
yeah, that's right. That's good. I know just thinking back to what we were talking about earlier as far as going out and listening before the season starts and getting familiar with stuff. I think sometimes also it can be a habit for hunters that have routinely hunted a certain piece of property to just take for granted that it's all going to be the same hunt again next year. And I've shown up at some places before when all of a sudden I found out that the landowner had, put up a fence or, cut a bunch of treetops down where there used to be a bunch of cover, now it's not there. So I think it's good to go out at least if you can once just to walk over the property, see what's changed. You never know, a tornado might have torn through there in the summertime and your favorite ridge may just be covered in blowdowns and you couldn't walk to your favorite listing spot if you wanted to in the morning without making all kinds of racket. I know same as with like with WMAs and things like that, a couple out of state hunts that we do. My dad and I we like to go to a state and hunt a lot, and we've hunted there for probably a decade. And we showed up one time, got up on this ridge, and as it started getting light, all the trees were gone. They took out about 300 acres of woods for a grouse habitat program, and they took out all these big woods that we were planning on hunting. But it was on the website. If we would have looked ahead of time, they had, the state was notifying where these things were taking place. But that might be even for burns or different things like that. It's always good to not just assume it's gonna be the same way it was last year.
Well, and going even deeper with that, talking about going out of state, even if it's a state that you're familiar with that you've hunted 3 or 4 times, you owe it to yourself to review those regs every year because stuff is changing literally like crazy everywhere every year. And then also, like you said, looking at maps, Onyx is really good about showing, if a place was timbered or if there's an active burn in that area or things like that. If you can't get there physically, either look at Onyx and try to find out some info there or reach out to a biologist in that area and try to reach out, find out from them if there are any things, timbering or anything that has happened in that area so you don't show up to your favorite place out of state that you've hunted for years and be shocked that it's completely clear cut or something. So yeah, I mean, just that comes back down to staying ready and prepared and being prepared. And, um, I deer hunt and stuff too, and I fish and whatever, and I stay busy outside in the outdoors, but I'm a turkey hunter and there is not a day of my life. You can ask my wife. There's not a day of my life that turkeys are not talked about or thought about, or a call's not ran in this house, or a map's not looked at, or something. It's always something, some kind of prep. I'm already prepping for next spring, not this spring, but next spring. Got like I said, you got to stay on top of that stuff, especially with the way that regs are these days and changing, and these out of state places becoming draws that have always been OTC. You know, you got to stay on top of that stuff, especially if you want to travel and do it. Like I do, or like anybody does. Anybody can do it. It's not like it's some magic formula. You can do it if you really want to and you really love to do it, and you just want to extend your season, or you just want to go to a neighboring state or whatever. Like you can do it. You
Absolutely.
just got to put a little bit of legwork in it.
Very good. Well, Zach, thanks for the conversation. And just for listeners, if they have other questions that they want to reach out to you and talk about turkey hunting, or I know other ways where they could just kind of watch some of the hunts that you've been on and kind of get to see firsthand how you handle yourself in the woods and things like that. What kind of options do you want to give to people as far as how to get a hold of you or to watch what you've been doing?
Yeah, we have a YouTube channel that all of our hunts are on. I've been on several other channels too with them, but our YouTube channel is GGG Outdoors / Kingdom Connection. Um, we started out as GGG Outdoors and had this big dream, like everybody does, to be the next Primos or whatever, and then you know quickly kind of realized, well, my wife is a worship leader, so she kind of asked me like, "What's your purpose in life?" And uh, I said, "I don't really know." And I'd played basketball my whole life, and then I became obsessed with hunting at a young age, and um, as I grew up and matured as an adult, I said, well, this might be my ministry avenue. So, I've kind of tried to. I never want to push Jesus on anybody or shove it down anybody's throat, but how can anybody be in his creation and not see him is beyond me. And, so I always try to just give thanks where I can to him. And if it weren't for him, I wouldn't have the breath in my lungs or the passion in my heart to do what I do. So, I thank him when I'm able to experience a spring morning. Every spring morning, I thank him for it. So it became Kingdom Connection, and it's been that since. And it's Kingdom Connection's all about people like me and you connecting together through a wild turkey, but also through our love of Jesus Christ. So we share a common denominator there, and it opens up avenues and places that I would never have thought I could you know share about Jesus because of a turkey. People, it brings like-minded people together. Turkeys do, and it's unlike anything I've ever experienced in my life. But so, long story short, it became more than just an outdoor show or filming outdoor hunts or whatever. It kind of became a little bit of a ministry and an avenue for me to just share the love of Jesus and His beauty through His creation. So GGG Outdoor / Kingdom Connection. That's our YouTube channel. It's predominantly turkey hunting, but that's that. Instagram, I'm on there, Zach20065, and then our Kingdom Connection Instagram is Kingdom Connection WV, and then Facebook, Zach Lucas is me, and then we've got the Grunt Gobble and Gills Outdoors / Kingdom Connection is our Facebook page. So that's where you can reach out to us. Send me a message on any of those things. I'll respond. Love to talk turkey with everybody. I build turkey calls. I don't really put them out there for people, but if people want some, I'll build them whatever they want. Mouth calls. So just always love talking turkeys with people. Always love connecting with people. It's part of Kingdom Connection, just connecting with people and traveling and hunting with people all over the country. And like I said, it's opened doors for me that I would have never thought possible. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Well, thanks, Zach. Good luck this season, and hope you have a chance to fill a lot of tags.
Thank you. I really appreciate you having me on.
That right there is the complete turkey hunting playbook. Planning the trip the right way, being patient when it matters, choosing the right setup, and reading the woods like a gobbler lives there, because he does. Huge thanks to Zach from Kingdom Connection for breaking it all down and sharing the mindset behind consistent success. And if this episode helped you level up, here's how you can support the show. First, make sure you're subscribed so you never miss an episode. Second, leave us a 5-star review. Those reviews generally help more hunters find our podcast. And third, share this episode with a buddy who needs to hear it before opening morning. And finally, if you believe in what we're building here, consider financially supporting the show. Your support helps us keep bringing on great guests and producing content that makes you feel more effective in the woods. And don't forget to sign up for our insider newsletter by using the link in the show notes. That's where we go deeper with strategy breakdowns, exclusive resources, and behind-the-scenes content that you won't hear on the mic. We appreciate every single one of you. Now get out there and make some better decisions in the woods, and we'll see you next time. The pursuit is wild. Never stop learning.